So this morning when I told my kid I was coming to a movie theater, he asked me if I could bring some popcorn. I still I need to figure that one out, but anyway, I'm super happy to be here and grateful as well for the array of content that has been presented today. I feel like a lot of it really comes together. And with many of us talking about developer experiences, many of us talking about how personas basically evolve. And before I talk about solutions marketing, I want to talk about basically how complex the developer needs really are. Like if you think about it, developers are multifaceted individuals that need to be shifting gears on a day-to-day basis, right? Like they have to go, for example, from debugging an existing tool to building a new one, to influencing different stakeholders to adopt a new one or not adopt one. And at the same time, they need to be constantly thinking about relearning how to do their job. So they're definitely evolving on a day-to-day basis. And to make it more interesting, developers constantly need to be navigating through many different tools, features, and resources. So, and by the way, many of those might not even be part of your own organization portfolio. So if you think about it, developers are really hard to segment, right? Like if you were to think about how you go about condensing a developer persona, I'm sure everyone here has struggled with that exercise, right? Like how do you even basically come up with a segmentation analysis to say this is who you are? You simply can't. And I think that the key here, in my opinion, is that we as developer marketers need to think about marketing in a different way. We need to think about our jobs in terms of knowing the developers so that we can help them succeed and not necessarily sell them. And that's where I think that many of us basically are not, myself included, might not have the right mindset in order to approach marketing correctly with the developer community. So, oh my gosh, hold on, I'm on the wrong slide here. So a big part of helping them succeed and understanding them is to know what the developer journey is, right? So effectively, you can think about the developer journey as the end-to-end process to build, design, deploy, and maintain a given software system. And just like developer experiences have common traits, so does the developer journey. So the developer journey, in my opinion, is quite unique. I think most of you would agree that the developer journey is never linear. As I said, developers are constantly shifting gears between tasks and activities. And in my opinion, recognizing that early on is a great way. To basically figure out how you serve your content, right? Like your information architecture can be approached. Rather than being approached from a place of marketing a product, you basically approach it in an intuitive way so that you serve that content when it's mostly relevant to developers. On the other side, we talked about how it's ever evolving. With new tech stacks coming into the space, with the next basically software release, they always have to be thinking about how that's going to affect them on a day-to-day basis. And it's completely disjointed. As I said, you need to be shifting between so many different tools, so many different resources, be that learning resources, documentation, etc. So what does all have to do with solutions? In many ways, solutions is meant to be a tool to help you address many of these common characteristics that developers share. Either by using some of the frameworks that solutions marketing use, even if you're a product marketer, or by thinking about marketing a specific product in a more customer-centric way. Effectively, a solution is basically a way to package different components to solve for a specific problem or drive a specific outcome. So let me just unpack that, right? So the developer journey, as I said, involves different products, different tools, different resources. having a common understanding of what that developer journey is and figuring out how can you map it back to the developers is what the solution marketing approach talks about. So you can think about solutions as a blueprint. The main characteristics that they have is they're usually customer or developer centric, and they're already being used. They're already in practice out in the field, and they're being used to solve a specific problem for a specific vertical or for a specific tech horizon. So, for instance, they can be used to address horizontal developer needs, like, for example, security access control. Like, that's a specific, basically, tech horizon. Or when it comes to a specific business outcome, for a specific vertical, you can talk about optimizing monetization for game developers. Like, that's basically the outcome that you're trying to drive. What makes them unique is that they are vertical and product agnostic, and they start with the developer's needs. Another aspect worth noting is that they have to be standardized. They need to offer seamless and consistent experience in order to scale properly. So what are the main differences between solutions and product? So product traditionally, has, when it comes to its components, it has single attributes and functionality, whereas a solution tries to integrate a set of product services and resources together. When you think about customer input, product usually needs customer input early on, versus a solution that needs customer input on an ongoing basis, but at the same time from a subset of your customers. Products are usually a lot more broad, right? You basically go out and do product marketing, and you basically have to think about your broad set of users, whereas solutions are really a lot more narrow, and I think that that's something that is important to know. Solutions do not work for everything. They only work for specific subsets that you deem important within your organization. The team and skills, well, traditional product is developed by a single engineering team that lives within a specific business function or product function, whereas when it comes to solutions, it requires collaborations between engineering, product teams within different silos, even sales, support, etc. And finally, when it comes to concept capture, basically the knowledge information system, if you may, for product is, I would say, I don't want to oversimplify it because I know it's a lot harder than this, but it's a lot more straightforward. When it comes to a solution, you really need to think about how you map different resources together to match the developer journey. So as I said, I think the main thing component that solutions offer is you deliver value, right, through the developer experience, not the product itself. You're basically delivering value through the developer experience to come up with a specific outcome. So what solutions gives you is literally a blueprint of how different products and resources meet a specific needs and objectives. So when I talk about resources, actually, let me go back here for a minute because I think this is something important to talk about. When you talk about resources, I want to clarify what that means. So resources can be, learning artifacts. It can be the community. It can be documentation. It can be your blog. It can be other companies' blogs. And so the most simple, basically, solution that anyone can build is precisely mapping all of those different resources in a way that is intuitive and easy for developers to follow. So when you talk about the different solutions levels, this is up for challenging 100%, but I think there's like 4 main primary levels of different marketing solutions. One is blueprint. And in a way, it's really repackaging, existing tools, products, and resources to address issues. They're basically meant to only support discoverability and just simplify the journey for developers. In other words, they do not include any type of developer or engineering resources. The second level of solutions is a heavy lift on the content production space. You don't necessarily need to have any engineering resources, but it is really important to figure out how you can create an intuitive path and actually build, like, for example, web properties in order to allow developers to find all the information out there. And then when it comes to the third level, I call it integrated pathway. This one does require developer resources. And what it really means is that you basically are integrating different tools through APIs, scripting, etc., in order to basically create a simplest basically approach to that specific developer journey. And finally, standalone interface speaks to literally having like a differentiated UI and UX that basically brings everything together under one single roof. So when approaching basically solutions marketing within any given organization, I definitely think that starting here is the best way to get momentum for a solutions marketing practice within the organization. It's a good way to test the water. And I'll tell you why. Solution marketing has so many different challenges. I think like everything else, solutions basically have their own limitations and many organizational challenges. The biggest one, in my opinion, is cultural change. A solution strategy requires basically common understanding of what they are and what they are not within your organization, and from many different teams. It requires you to work across many different organizational silos. So, when you're basically marketing a specific product, the likelihood of you having to answer to individual basically business objectives is really high. When you're trying to come up with a solution, then you're basically working across many different senior stakeholders that have their own basically opinions in terms of what is deemed important for the organization. And so you basically coming up with something that everyone agrees is a really hard job. Product versus solutions marketing responsibility, I think, is another big one. I feel like product marketers should and are always basically like doing some sort of solutions marketing, within their specific functions. I mean, in fact, I feel like the reason why we don't tout about solutions marketing as much is because I'm sure everyone here is probably doing it, but we just don't use the language, right? Because it's not something that we need, that we get to do as our main primary function within our organization. Identifying solutions and target audience, I think this one is key. Again, like there's many ways, since you're basically addressing a subset of your customers, how do you actually go about deciding what solution you're going to market? And then the biggest challenge becomes, how do you basically decide what vertical are you addressing, or what text horizon are you going to develop a solution for? And then the next challenge becomes hierarchy. Are you talking to basically the executives within the organization? Are you talking to engineering team, etc.? So I mean, all of those conversations are conversations that I think are worth having really, really early on, so that you can really like laser focus on delivering value. And moving on, I think that when it comes to approaching solution, for me, I guess the most important one is commitment from the executive team. At Google, I was coming up with a solution. Working on it with a team for almost a year. And when we were in mid-flight, our main executive sponsor left the company. And as you can imagine, that was a big problem, right? Because all of a sudden, this senior stakeholder that had transversal basically responsibilities across the company's portfolio of products was not at Google anymore. And so how do I go and talk basically to my Android senior stakeholder to let him know, hey, we're going to talk about Android, but we're also going to talk about Firebase. We're going to talk about Firebase, but we also need to cover something on Google Play. So, like figuring that out is really hard. So I think that something that is really important is to get commitment from senior leadership very early on, hopefully more than one in case that person lives, and then also from a marketing executive. The second thing that I'd like to mention here is willingness to stay the course. Solutions, to see the payoff of a solution marketing approach takes time. It takes time to figure out what solution you're going to market, figure out who specifically you want to talk to, make sure that you get basically internal buy-in. Then how do you approach branding when you're talking about different products within the organization? And the list goes on and on and on. And you haven't even gone to market. If you want to see the payoffs, the best approach to do it is to stay the course from a long period of time. I mean, it obviously depends on the solution that you're developing, but anywhere between a year to longer, which is a hard thing to do because the company's priorities are constantly shifting. Again, there's the next big product launch that you need to think about. And so how do you actually have the creative freedom and the executive backup in order to focus to that specific initiative you're developing? And finally, marketers are change agents. I think that like me trying to talk a little bit more about solution is a way that I am also trying to be a little bit of a change agent, so that people within any given organization think about solutions in a different way as an approach that can deliver immense value. So with that, I wanted to finish somewhat fast so that we can focus on Q&A as well. And happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I definitely have some questions of my own, but I want to open it up to the audience. And just as a reminder, because we are recording, please wait for the mic runner to come by before asking your question. And it looks like we have one right up there. So just wait to ask it so we can pick it up on the video feed.
Yes, thank you so much for this talk. Solutions marketing is a really, I see a lot of value in this approach for sure, especially with a number of different products that kind of come together to solve a problem. I guess my question for you is, you mentioned focusing in when you think about a solution. You mentioned kind of focusing in on a specific problem to solve or group or industry to target. Can you share a little bit more about how you kind of hone in and refine that scope? Because it can be, in my experience, it can be pretty broad, but you want to probably get it a bit more specific. So anything you can share on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, first off, I'd like to come up with the specific business outcomes, developer outcomes that you want to build a solution for. Or, if it's basically solving a technical problem, figure out what the tech horizon might be and what that problem might be. I think that's basically number one. There's two additional things that I think are crucial as well. One is, and this is where I think that, thinking about solutions marketing in a different way is a different way of even positioning, a given product. It's developer-centric. You're delivering value literally through the developer experience that you're providing. So I think having those customers be the ones that are telling you what are the solutions that are being used in the market is incredibly important. And you can do that in many different ways. If you want to take it to the next level, I think it's insanely valuable to have a developer council, right? That actually helps communicate a lot of that information back to you as a marketer and also to other people within the organization. So that's number one. It's developer-centric. Make sure that you're talking to the community. The most successful solutions out there are already being used in the market. Like, this is not something that you're reinventing. Like trying to come up with a solution for something that is not being used, you're probably putting yourself in the foot, right? Because it hasn't been proven yet. And then the second thing is, as I said, like having executives being involved in this process is crucial. So doing a design thinking workshop that you as a marketer or with engineering or product or DevRel can, come to the table and let them know, hey, here are the different basically things that the different solutions that the art community is already using. Here's what they're solving. Let's talk about what we can focus on. Like, let them be part of that conversation. And yeah, I mean, those are basically the two main things I would consider.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm going to ask my question. So I was inspired. You can bear with me. We're talking about frameworks here. I'm going to go from Jane Austen to Parks and Recreation to what you talked about here. So, and actually, I had a chance to meet tomorrow's chair, and we had this great conversation, kind of product-led, sales-led. What do you do when you're essentially like one person within an organization? And it inspired this Jane Austen quote, so bear with me. There's nothing I would not do for those who are really my friends. I have no notion of loving people by halves. It is not my nature. And the concept is, like Ron Swanson, don't half-arse two things, whole-arse one thing. And the thing that connects it back to this is one of the things you talked about are silos, really honing in on that one thing. Enough of us in the room have been in your shoes to know that you're going to be pulled, if not by executives in a lot of different directions, by functions in a lot of different directions, by product teams in a lot of different directions. So there's one challenge that you have at the large company, which is managing all of those. Then on the flip side, at the small companies, it's kind of like, if I have the resources to choose one, what do I do? So how do you think about encouraging people to whole arse one thing when it comes to solutions? Like, how do you negotiate? How do you prioritize?
Yeah, wow. Ouch, that's a big one. I don't know. I mean, I think that, as I said, you know, I feel like the most successful solutions is not a push activity. You know, it's a pull activity. So, I mean, I would say that's the one thing. Like, you know, like, I feel like we all have basically many different business priorities, and we're constantly being pulled. You know, when it comes to a big organization, as you said, like, everyone has different business interests, if you may. When you're in a small organization is, oh my God, I could be doing all of this. There's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there. I mean, I would say you need to basically let the developers be the ones that are telling you like what direction to take. I think it's, for this particular case, I do believe that solutions marketing is more, so most of the frameworks are useful for organizations that have, you know, a multi-product portfolio. For smaller organizations, I don't think that, you know, like trying to basically use this framework early on can actually be damaging. You might be narrowing a lot your approach. So I would, you know, just basically think about what can solutions marketing offer me in terms of having the right mindset. Like, for instance, what I was saying before, and I want to talk about this really quickly as well, because I think it's really important. You know, when we talk about segmentation of personas, we talk about, you know, you know, what their needs are. But I want to know, like, how many people here are asking themselves, you know, what does the developer mindset is at any given time? What are they trying to do, right? Like, you know that, like an app developer, for instance, you know, it's a full stack app developer. Well, it turns out that they're not always building a tool, you know? They actually have to do other mindsets and other things. Like, for instance, they need to think about how to influence stakeholders, what I was mentioning before. They need to think about, so anyway, like, I feel like that particular concept is useful beyond solutions.
Awesome,
So I
thank
sort
you.
of answered your question, but I didn't.
It absolutely did. I think that there were a lot of really beautiful nuggets that came out of it. Everything from the developer at the center, and really understanding like when it's time to use these different methods and these different approaches. And so I think thinking about what your developers need, what your company's priorities are, and whether or not this approach is actually the right approach to take in that moment. So I think that that's awesome. Thank you. Other questions? I think we have a few more minutes left. Alrighty, we have one here.
Thank you for this. This has been really, really helpful, and I agree. I think that there's a lot of value in this. let me try to phrase this the right way. I'm kind of looking at your solution levels, and I'm curious too. I mean, this is something that's so broad across so many different teams within marketing. I'm curious how this fits within like your go-to-market strategy. Like, how do you fit it within your value proposition? Is this like key themes? Like, how do you think about it and use it in market?
Wow. So, traditional product marketing, like in a way, like is approaching positioning in a product-centric way. I'm not saying that it's not, and please don't kill me for saying this openly, but like I feel like when it comes to, for example, coming up with a value proposition for a solution, the product is just a single component of what you're trying to market. So again, like it all comes back again to the developer experience. You're basically deriving value based on the developer experience. So if you basically try to come up with a value proposition based on, I would basically start, okay, let me just rephrase this. I would start with the outcome itself, or with the problem that you're trying to solve. Regardless of the products that are behind the tool. And then basically build backwards. Yeah, is that that was one part of your question. There was another piece there that I missed.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think the other piece is like just integrating it with your other marketing activities too.
Like go to market. Oof, that's a hard one. So I think that it's important to think about it in terms of, rather than outbound, more inbound marketing activities. Like you have your own owned channels, marketing channels, right? That are usually belong to specific products, right? I'm not saying that that's always the case, but in many cases, you've got marketing channels that are dedicated to a specific product. In that particular case, my recommendation is try to focus on inbound activities, like how can you participate in the community with the solution? How are you? I think community is such an important piece of solutions marketing. It's super important. I also talked about the developer council. It's important to basically like also use that as an enablement mechanism as well. Basically going to trade shows. I think that trying to stay a little bit away from owned, it can also work. But the exercise there is a little bit more taxing. Yeah, you're at sales at Amazon, right? And at some of the big organizations, it's going to be a lot harder to basically have the approvals and whatnot in order to basically have these conversations in their own channels. So I would try to basically stay on other type of activities.
I think we might have time for one more question. Thank you so much for sharing. Really, really appreciate it. Let's give a round of applause.